So, Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal reports that Apollo Global Management has put up a $11 billion bid to buy Paramount's film and TV studios. This is higher than the company's current market cap of about $7.7 billion. But this is strictly Paramount's film and TV and direct TV studios. So this would not include television stations that they own, but that are not technically Paramount TV productions. So this purchase would not include things like CBS, BET, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, MTV, Paramount Plus, or Pluto TV, right? It would really just be for that film and the direct TV production that they do themselves. So who's Apollo Global Management? So it's a private equity firm, and they have a history of getting involved in media and media related things. So they purchased the owner of American Idol, CKX, which I guess is like a production company. They bought that company in 2011. They also purchased Yahoo from Verizon in 2021. And over the years, they've held stakes previously in companies like Barnes & Noble, Cox Media Group, Legendary Entertainment, Redbox, and Sirius Satellite Radio. So again, so they have a pretty good portfolio, both past and present, right? I've done stories on this channel about Paramount potentially being sold. Highly recommend you go check those out. So Apollo is not the only potential suitor, if you will. There are other alternatives. So the one that I made a video about, Byron Allen, who's a producer, runs the company Allen Media Group. I think he owns the Weather Channel, like things like that. He placed a $30 billion bid, but for the whole thing, from my understanding. There's also Skydance Media, who wants to buy National Amusements, which is the parent company of Paramount. And there was also talks that maybe Paramount would merge with Warner Brothers Discovery, but that seems to have kind of gone by the wayside. There's also talks that they might do a streaming joint venture with Comcast, which is NBC Universal and their streaming service Peacock. And, the Hollywood Reporter here notes that Apollo may have an upper hand over all of those since financing is, quote, unlikely to be a problem, end quote. As opposed to these other companies that are media companies themselves, whereas Apollo is just another level of money, right? They just have way better access to capital to make such a purchase happen. It seems like the market agrees, because after the news of this came out, Paramount shares surged about 12%. But then they declined after news that Sherry Redstone, who basically is the majority stakeholder in National Amusements, the parent company of Paramount. Supposedly Sherry Redstone is not interested. Here's a picture of her here wearing a great polo kind of thing. Okay, we're kind of matching today. She's not interested, apparently. Because again, Apollo just wants the film and direct TV production. And she would prefer to keep the company together, right? And of all the different suitors, it seems like Skydance Media, which I think is owned by David Ellison, whose father Larry Ellison was like a famous private equity guy. That seems to be her preferred choice, because again, Skydance Media would buy the whole thing. It wouldn't be kind of selling it off for parts, right? And again, this kind of just raises these overall questions: is what is Paramount's future? And I think the answer to that is we don't know. Again, will it be sold for parts? Clearly, Apollo wants to do something like that. And you could, theorize or visualize a scenario where it's like, okay, Apollo could buy the film business, and then maybe Warner Brothers buys the streaming angle, and then NBC or whatever, or one of the other studios buys CBS, and they all kind of get separated, right? But a lot of analysts think that wouldn't really be a good idea. We have a quote here from an analyst, David Joyce, saying, quote, "We think there's too much interconnectivity between the film and TV IP, and for that matter, between TV and studios and the recently segmented DTC, or direct-to-consumer divisions." That would be like their streaming. There's been too much interconnectivity of all what I just said for Paramount Global to be sold in pieces. We think it would be value destructive, end quote. And then other analysts have said, quote, "The rest of the company may appear hollow," end quote. So there's obviously a lot of things under this Paramount umbrella, but these analysts are saying that, the film, Paramount Pictures is this century-old institution. So Paramount, without Paramount Pictures, there is quite a bit still there on paper, but it just kind of the optics feel like it's just like like they said, it would appear hollow. It would be value destructive. It would actually lower the value of all those other things. Because like, what's the point of getting Paramount Pictures, the film studio, but not the streaming service? So what's gonna go on the streaming service, right? I guess the CBS stuff and the MTV stuff and all that. But it just I'm semi in agreement with Sherry Redstone here. With something like Disney, you could see a lot of their assets that they are kind of maybe considering spinning off or selling off to someone else or merging them with something else. That makes a little bit more sense because Disney has control over so many different kinds of things, whereas Paramount, they all seem very interdependent on one another. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I'm not sure what the future is for Paramount. But again, the fact there have been all of these suitors, potential buyers, I think just speaks to, it's not looking good for Paramount, right? Like the fact that no one's trying to buy Disney, as far as we know, because Disney's so valuable. So if people are trying to buy Paramount, that itself, on one hand, says, oh, people want it. But on the other hand, I think people are thinking, let's get it because it's cheap and it's undervalued and we can make it worth more. But the corollary of that is like, okay, so it's not worth a lot now. So it's just a kind of a shame to see this studio that has a lot of access to IP. In a perfect world, people would just make good movies. But, from a purely business standpoint, there's a lot of IP here that can do really well. They just need to figure out how to, capitalize on it.